My first guest this morning says no generation has been photographed, videotaped, Instagrammed, or Facebooked more than the millennial generation. And if you're the parent of a young adult, you may be wondering just how to relate to them and how to motivate them. Studio 5 contributor Dr. Matt Townsend is here with insight into the millennial in your life. First of all, it's good to see you, friend.
Good to see you.
I've missed you.
How's Emmy?
Emmy. Matt's throwing a little French fancy to her name.
It's cute. She is a doll.
Thank you. Thank
Chunky.
you. Chunk of love.
Just
yes,
like her
she
daddy.
is. Can't wait for you to meet her.
I know. Bring her over.
All right, millennials. Emmy is not a millennial.
She's not. 18 to 34-year-olds.
18 to 34-year-olds.
In the year 2015, if you have an 18 to 34-year-old, millennials.
Which I'm thrilled to
that you
say
just found
that
out you are
fit
one.
into that category.
But for the rest of us, it explained a lot.
Did it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because some people don't relate to this title. They don't think they are a millennial.
Right.
But just because you're born in a certain age range doesn't mean you're automatically a millennial. Except here's an interesting thing. A lot of this could be just tied to the fact that this is the technology generation.
Right.
This is the first generation raised with a lot of technology around them, and it may be warping some of them.
Well, it brings on a lot of fear from a parenting perspective, right? Because we don't know how this technology is going to affect them. So is technology something parents should be worried about if you're the parent of a millennial?
Yeah, I wouldn't be. Because this is their life. This is how they've known to live. I mean, remember, this is the baby we ultrasounded. And then we showed everybody the ultrasound, and then we put it on social media. This is the baby that we have taken video after video after video. This is the baby that has been the highlight of everything in their life was around them. And everything's been videoed and documented and socially sent out there. So this is a different generation. And it has a different mentality, and we got to treat them differently.
So the idea of, oh my gosh, my child is on social media like crazy, Facebook, Instagram, you're not too concerned?
No, in fact, I personally believe as parents we need to embrace that. See, they're using this technology as an expression and as education. They see technology differently than we do. They are just truly expressing themselves. So they are trying to sit there and say, this is who I am. They're not afraid to put anything out there. These are the people, this age group is going to, they're going to periscope their wedding. They're going to FaceTime everyone into any big event in their life.
So embrace it.
Everything's there, and they're just trying to express. And this is a group of young adults and people that have learned to express, and they also are way into learning, which is going to be weird because a lot of times we think learning means we go to the university. A lot of these kids don't buy into formal education. A lot of these kids aren't going to school. Part of it is because during the recession, a lot of people couldn't get jobs and were getting deeply in debt. So some of them were like, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to go get in debt when I can learn a trade by watching YouTube. My kids know more. Did I ever tell you the story about one of my kids said, tell me why the waves work the way they do. And in my head, I'm like, well, I think the fish are making a lot of movement, and my son jumps in and says, oh, it's the moons and it's the gravitational pull of the moon, and he starts to explain it. And I ask him, where did you get that? And he's like, YouTube. He's YouTubing everything all the time. This is the generation that if you tell your kids something, they can actually correct you in 5 seconds. If you're not telling the truth or if you're not accurate, they'll give you the accurate answer. So they like to use this technology for expression and education. It might bug you because they'll correct you.
And hard to swallow a little bit. That formal education is what we know and embrace, right? Let me ask you this. Do you think this generation is overconfident?
Yes. This is the generation where every kid got a trophy. This is the generation where they could do no wrong. This is the generation where we told them they could be anything they want to be. And truly, we think they could be. And there's stories. There's Barack Obama. There's all of these things they've been raised with. And so this is a fairly confident group. And I suggest we learn to guide these kids and their passions. They're highly creative. Part of the creativity is because they're the Pinterest generation. They have a million ideas for what a wedding bouquet should look like. They know what it looks like, and they're daring enough to think they could do it. And there's nobody that's told them no. And so a lot of this is, remember, folks, was created by our parenting. We parented this generation, so we're the ones that maybe instilled a lot of confidence, and then they have a ton of ideas. So a lot of times we just need to guide these. We need to be patient with them and guide their passion, guide their creativity.
This next point has a lot of parents, I think, in a state of discomfort, right? Because from choosing their friends to choosing their values, this is a very, very accepting generation, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's uncomfortable, I think, for a lot of older folk to try to understand that.
See, we think they're very open-minded as a generation, and part of that's because they've been raised seeing everything. They've been raised seeing the Cosbys on television. They've been raised seeing everything. They're open-minded. Now, in the old days, open-minded meant you were a hippie doing drugs and marijuana. And this is an age group, this is a generation, though, that they're open to diversity in a way that no other age group is open to it. They're open up to different definitions of what genders can do and equality. They're very open to same-sex marriage, for example. That one of the reasons that came to fruition is because this is a generation that believes that everybody are equal and they need to be loved equally.
So how can you raise a child who plays to that advantage, right?
Yeah.
They are compassionate, they are loving, they are accepting, but how can we still teach them boundaries?
So one thing I would get into big time with our kids is talk a lot about our principles, talk about our beliefs, talk about our values, and demonstrate love. If you're trying to teach a principle that somehow goes counter to love, it's not going to work. So we have to model love for these children. I've had some of my children correct some of their grandparents because some of the things they were saying aren't socially acceptable anymore. We don't call people that, Grandma. We don't say that anymore, Grandpa. And so this is a group that needs to know that love is what we lead with. And acceptance is there. It doesn't mean I have to agree with everything you're doing, but you need to love these people unconditionally.
You say this is a group, these millennials, that need space. So how can you allow them that space and freedom, but still keep a good connection?
See, it's such an interesting thing. They believe so much in freedom and space, more than any other generation. The problem is they kind of have the caviar dreams with the beer budget, right? The champagne dreams with the beer budget, because they've always been told they can have whatever they want. They want the freedom. They want the space. These people don't want contracts. These are people that don't believe in mortgages. The millennials are a group that would rather kind of rent than get a mortgage. They tend to be the group that they're not going to get into long obligations. They would rather go drive, get an Uber car or go get one of those rent-a-bikes that you rent downtown and ride to the other side of town.
Right.
They're big into sharing and co-oping because there's no reason we need to spend money, and that gives them freedom. The number one thing they want freedom of is their time. They watched our generation get hooked into mortgages thinking that would make us happy. They've seen the mortgage bomb and the big destruction of the housing market. They've seen a lot of inconsistency, and they're like, why would I want to just go strap myself to a job when I could be free, when I could actually go do what I love to do and be with the people I love to be. Now, be with. The problem is if they're not making money, they don't have some freedoms.
Well, right, and I think that's a point that worries a lot of people, that this generation is resisting that obligation like you talked about. So how do we work around that?
Well, they're also fine living with you. They're also fine staying with mom and dad. And they actually love that because they're really big into relationships. They love you. And they love the freedom that you facilitate, and they also love the idea that we could be a family together, but you kind of want them to grow up and move on.
So it's that balance of it, respecting their love for people, which is a great thing, but still teaching them those work principles. Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, though, they don't want to work. They want to generally work as a group, as an age group. They tend to want to work to do something they love to do, something they're passionate about. They do not want to just go get into the ball and chain 9-to-5 job, because they realized in your life it didn't work.
Well, see,
so they're trying not to make the mistakes we made.
That's another point that's hard, because there's that, that old saying, find out what you love to do and get paid for it. That doesn't work for everybody.
It doesn't work for everybody. And so that scares us as parents. So a lot of this we just have to creatively, lovingly kind of coach them on and help them try to find their way of doing it. And you can try to preach the old principles all day long, but these are people that have actually lived a considerably different life than you ever did. They lived 9/11. They've seen abuse. They've seen a lot of stuff because it was all visually shown to them on television. A lot of us older generations, the X, the Y gens, we didn't see all of this stuff.
You may have heard about it, but it wasn't right in front of you.
Now we can see it. And my son, and don't kid yourself, they're watching it. So if they have a question today, they go Google it. They go YouTube it, and they see the answer. So this is where parents need to be an active part. Kids love, these millennials love relationships more than things. Where we used to kind of get into mortgages and picket fences and houses, and what they want are relationships and closeness. And it's actually a beautiful thing. To me, they're really a beautiful generation. It's just we sometimes, as the older gen, we don't know how to deal with it. And remember too, we grew up in an age that was pretty static. There were changes, but it was about every 10 years, and Walter Cronkite walked you through it, right? Now, these people are having changes every single day. Tsunamis, issues. Think of all the stories with the big headlines for the last 10 years. These kids didn't hear about it, they watched it over and over and over again.
I love how you praise it as a beautiful generation, and I think this is extremely helpful, just wrapping our brains around how they think so we know how to reach them at a deeper level.
Because if we think they're other than that, we'll treat them differently.
Great stuff, Matt. Thank you so much. Speaking of great stuff, a great date night is coming up, and you have a big discount for Studio 5
November
viewers.
7th. All you got to do is go to Date Nights with Matt. If you put in the passcode Studio 5, $10 off for any couple. This is my favorite date night because it's just where I talk about the differences. It's probably the funniest stuff I do, and I got a ton of new stuff because I'm almost a grandpa.
You almost are. We're counting down to that as well. $10 off. Thanks for that.
You bet.
All right.